All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something incredibly serious, but honestly, absolutely crucial for anyone involved in HR, management, or just running a business right now. We're looking at Taiwan's massive overhaul of workplace governance, specifically the sweeping 2026 Workplace Bullying Prevention Act. We're going to break down exactly why these stringent new laws were created, what they actually mean for you and your business, and how organizations literally have to transform their entire compliance strategies from the ground up. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the tragedy that sparked this legal reform, then move into how the law actually defines workplace bullying now. After that, we'll hit the new employer mandates, look at the rigid investigation process, and wrap up with how to genuinely foster a safe culture. Let's jump right into part one. Tragedy sparks legal reform, the MOL incident. So to really grasp these new rules, we have to look back at November 2024. A tragic event happened at the Ministry of Labor's Workforce Development Agency. A 39-year-old IT analyst actually took his own life in the office. Now, this immediately triggered an internal investigation, right? But that first report in November was heavily criticized across the entire political spectrum. People felt it was just protecting the branch director involved. The public outcry was so intense that it forced a second, truly independent investigation in December, which confirmed severe workplace bullying. And the fallout was swift. By June 2025, the Legislative Yuan passed major legal amendments, setting the stage for the massive 2026 compliance rules we're talking about today. The details that came out of that investigation were just staggering. The IT analyst was dealing with insane overwork. We're talking 16-hour days, literally from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. But honestly, it wasn't just the hours. It was the relentless psychological pressure. The branch director demanded 24/7 availability on the line messaging app, enforced a crazy 1-minute reply rule, and regularly yelled at and verbally abused the staff. It was just a total obliteration of any kind of professional boundaries. And then there was this phrase, good intentions. This is what absolutely ignited the public fury. The Ministry of Labor's flawed initial report actually described the director's abusive management style as having, quote, good intentions. You can imagine the massive bipartisan backlash. It totally misunderstood the nature of abuse, right? It exposed this really dangerous institutional mindset that somehow equated relentless psychological pressure with strict management, aimed at better performance. To put all this into perspective, just look at this number, 81. That is the jaw-dropping number of employees, and that includes several managers, by the way, who resigned during that specific branch director's tenure. So, this wasn't just a minor interpersonal conflict. That number objectively screams that a highly toxic systemic culture was just allowed to persist completely unchecked until an absolute tragedy happened. Which brings us to Section 2, defining workplace bullying, crystal clear laws. To strip away all the ambiguity about what is and isn't acceptable behavior, the government moved super fast to draft robust guidelines. What you're seeing here is the official text of the new Workplace Bullying Prevention Measures Guidelines, which sit right under the Occupational Safety and Health Act. And here's the exact legal definition they landed on, and it's a total game changer. Workplace bullying is now defined as the continuous or repeated abuse of power beyond reasonable management scope that causes physical or mental harm to an employee's dignity. Think about that for a second. It finally draws a hard legal line separating tough but standard performance management from illegal, sustained psychological oppression. It all really boils down to that power imbalance and the repetitive nature of the harm. Article 2 goes even deeper, making it clear that bullying isn't just, loud yelling in the middle of the office. It can be super quiet, systemic sabotage, things like intentionally isolating a coworker, deliberately withholding information they actually need to do their job, giving them tasks that are just wildly outside their capability, or spreading rumors to wreck their reputation. The law explicitly recognizes these covert tactics as actionable offenses now. All right, moving into Section 3, new employer mandates, actionable compliance. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. These new legal requirements are scaled directly to your headcount. If your company has 10 or more employees, you've got to establish clear, formal complaint channels. Think dedicated emails or hotlines. Hit 30 employees? You need to draft written prevention rules and set up a dedicated unit just to handle these issues. And if you're at 100 employees or more, the rules get incredibly strict. You are legally required to form an investigation committee that actually includes external third-party professionals to guarantee total objectivity. This is a massive paradigm shift. Pre-2026, the law was honestly pretty vague. It mostly focused on post-incident remedies, basically just doing damage control after someone was already hurt. But from 2026 onward, the law demands strict pre-incident prevention and serious formalization of your internal processes. The government is not waiting for a tragedy to happen before they audit your HR practices anymore. Honestly, if you don't have this preventative framework set up, you're already non-compliant. And you definitely don't want to fail on this because the consequences are severe. Under these amendments, you could be looking at administrative fines up to 1 million NTD. If the bullying tragically leads to a fatality, responsible parties can actually face up to 7 years in prison. Plus, victims can easily launch civil lawsuits for emotional distress. But on top of all the legal stuff, probably the most crippling consequence for a business is the massive hit to your brand and your ability to recruit top talent once a toxic culture goes public. Let's look at Section 4, the investigation process, rigid and standardized. So if a complaint is filed, the new law leaves zero room for sweeping things under the rug. The timeline is highly rigid. You have exactly 10 working days to formally accept or reject the complaint in writing. From there, you go right into the investigation or mediation phase, and a fully formalized final report has to be wrapped up within 2 months. You literally cannot stall, and you definitely cannot handle this with a quiet chat behind closed doors anymore. And who's actually running this investigation? Well, the guidelines lay out some incredibly strict rules for the committee. It has to have a minimum of 3 members. Like we said, large firms have to bring in external experts. Plus, there's a strict gender ratio. No single gender can make up less than 1/3 of the committee. And crucially, anyone with a conflict of interest has to recuse themselves. This whole setup is very deliberately designed to stop that protecting our own mentality that was so devastating in the initial Ministry of Labor case. Now, here's a vital legal detail you cannot miss regarding the statute of limitations. Under Article 8, an employee can file a complaint up to 3 years after a bullying event happens. But get this, if the situation involved an abuse of power, they can file a complaint up to 1 year after they've actually resigned from the company. So consider this a massive heads up. Your legal liability does not just magically vanish because an abused employee decides to quit. Finally, Section 5, fostering a safe culture. Changing how we work. The good news is the Ministry of Labor isn't leaving businesses entirely in the dark. To help companies transition, they're rolling out some really helpful resources. They're providing comprehensive guidance manuals. For smaller businesses, which is huge, they're offering government subsidies to help cover the cost of hiring those external investigation experts. They're also setting up an official database of vetted professionals you can use, along with completely free digital learning tools to get your management teams trained up. But ultimately, true compliance here means shifting away from seeing this as just another annoying, punitive HR checklist. You've really got to integrate this into your core ESG, environmental, social, and governance principles. It's about proactively prioritizing the actual psychological safety of your workforce and just fundamentally changing how you view your human capital and operational risk. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today, and I want to leave you with this final vital question. Take a hard look at your current policies. Look at your management culture. Is your organization truly ready for this new era of workplace governance? Because the laws are here, the expectations have completely shifted, and honestly, the time to prepare is right now. Thank you so much for joining me as we unpacked this super crucial topic. Keep learning, keep evaluating your structures, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.